Yes. Hands up if you're Northern Irish. Hands up if you're Northern Irish. Good. Well, I know who I'm dealing with, right? You know, I've known Northern Ireland longer than most of you. My parents brought me here. I've only been to Northern Ireland 4 times. My parents brought me here in 1932. I was 2. And they took me to Portrush. And for many years, I thought about that visit, because I remember things when I was 2. Remember the Green Cliffs, you know. And I always thought I'd go back. I went to Scotland many times. And then finally, when I was 82, I was somewhere in Scotland, you know, the River Clyde. And I looked at the map, and Portrush was just over the water. And I thought, heck, I'll go to Portrush and see what... My parents have always said it was a lovely place, and see what it's like. So 2 years ago, I went to Portrush, and I'm telling you this story because I have a fresh impact, you know, of Northern Ireland. 80 years away, go back 80 years later, see Portrush again, and the impact of Portrush and its people. So I think I can tell you a little bit about how a foreigner, if you call me a foreigner, come to Ireland and the impression he gets. It's very quick. I'll tell you these stories. And then I've got an analysis of foreign cultures, which I've got on slide. And it's very difficult to do in half an hour because it's normally a study which takes, you know, 3 or 4 days. But I'll pack that in, and then I'll tell you another little story at the end. But I think telling you stories gives you the reality, anyway, for me, of coming to Northern Ireland. So I came to Portrush, and I checked in a bed and breakfast, and went to bed, and the next morning I got up all fresh to meet Portrush again. And I saw the landlord, and I said, now, I want to do what I can. I'm only here 2 or 3 days. I want to see everything in Portrush and the area. What do I do? And he said, what you do is, you go down to the harbour bar, and you talk to Willie. And Willie will fix anything. So I went to the harbour bar, and Willie was the barman, but he actually runs the place. Willie Gregg, his name is. I'd never seen him before, of course. So I walked into the bar, and Willie said, good to see you again, you know. I said, what do you mean again? He said, well, you've been here before. I said, I have, yeah, 1932. Well, he said, it's good to come and have a drink anyway. So I started feeling in my pockets. He said, you don't have to pay, you know. Now, Willie is the kind of Irishman who, if you don't have ready money, he offers you a free drink, or he lends you money so you can buy a drink. So, in any case, you're on a good wicket. So we had a drink too, and then he told me everything about Portrush. He told me where to go to a restaurant, get a big discount, a very good meal, just mention his name, you know, everything was first class. He told me where to walk, what to see, and so on. He told me everything. And then he said, what do you want to do today? So I said, well, it's lovely weather. I'd like a good long walk along the sea. He said, well, then you walk to Port Stewart. And it's, you know, it'll take you a couple of hours, but walk along the beach and a bit up and down. But so I did that. I walked to Port Stewart. And, you know, at my age, I can still walk, but I mean, it was a bit of a pull, and it took me 2 hours and up and down the cliffs. And finally, when I got to Port Stewart about, I suppose, 1 o'clock, I wanted to sit down. And there were these cafes along the front, and there were 2 old ladies, harmless-looking old ladies, you know, chatting away. So I thought I'll sit next to them. So I sat next to them and said, is this seat free? He said, yes, sit down. And after a while, they chatted to each other, and then they turned to me and said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm looking around Northern Ireland for the first time for many years. And they were very friendly, and both middle-aged. And so after a while we talked about this and that, you know, what you do and so on. And oh, well, you know, I teach a bit. And what are your interests? Well, you know, I like sport and so on. And I even play a little bit of golf, you see. And I said, I've got to keep fit at my age. So they said, oh, you play golf? I said, yes. I said, I know Ireland, you know, very famous for, Northern Ireland, very famous for golf. And they said, well, what's your handicap? And I said, well, 22. I was very modest about my handicap because it's really 27 or 28. But, you know, when you're a man, I mean, you can't really admit to having 27, 28. So I said 22, and he kind of nodded approvingly and said, well, that's very nice, you know. And so we went on talking about various things, tourism in Ireland, you know, the food and one thing and another. And it got to 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And So, and I said to one of the ladies, do you play golf? She said no. And I said, the other one, do you play golf? She said, well, a little bit. So I didn't want to embarrass her by asking her a handicap in case it was higher than mine. So we chitted and chatted and so on, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon I said, well, I'll have to get back. I'm staying in Portrush. Oh, and they said, it's a long pull back to Portrush. So one of the ladies said, why don't I give you a lift? I said, well, it's very kind of you. She said, I've got a car, let me give you a lift. And she said, you know, if you're interested in golf, I'll take you to the golf club and show you the golf club. Would you be interested? And I said, yes, it's very famous. So she said, come on, jump in the car. So I jumped in the car with this lady. She said goodbye to her friend, and she drove me to Portrush, and we got to the golf club, and, you know, drove me a little bit on the grass, and so I could see it, and someone came out and said, good afternoon, and he obviously was well known. So then another one came up and said, well, how are you, Mrs. Clark? And I said, she said, I'm fine, thank you. I'm just showing this young man around the course. So I said, you're not any relation to Darren Clark, are you? She said, I'm his mother. I said, you play a bit of golf, do you? She says, and stuff like that. So that was my introduction to Portrush after 80 years absence, when, of course, Darren Clark was not so well known at that time. Well, you know, this is the kind of thing that can happen to you when you come to Northern Ireland, and I think that tells you more than a lot of the analysis I'm going to show you now. So, has anyone got the slides? Here we are. It's Welcome to Northern Ireland. I didn't want to call it, so I just called it rather neutral. Welcome to Northern Ireland. Now let's see what we've got here. So, where's the clicker? Is this it here? The one with green? Green? Ah, yeah. The people of Northern Ireland will fall into 3 distinct categories, so cultural types, each one requiring a different form of welcome. So, you know, a German doesn't come here for the same reason that a Russian comes here, or an Italian comes here. They all tour for different reasons, and they come to Northern Ireland for different reasons. And they don't always know what you're going to offer when they come, but anyway, they find something. And you know, there are 3 categories of people. There are the linear active people, in case you didn't know, and the multi-active people and the reactive people. And you can guess, you know, the linear actives, they're the plodders, you know, the Germans and so on. And then you've got the multi-actives, the Italians and the Spaniards and so on. And then you've got the reactives, people who just react to what you do and say, Japanese, Chinese, Asians in general. And we've done the kind of league table. We've tested 76,000 people around the world. And you see there that the most linear active people are down here at the bottom, the Germans, the Americans, the Brits, and well, Ireland is in there, a little bit higher up on the left, and the multi-active people at the top, excitable, and the quiet Asians at the bottom here. So that's a kind of league table which we've established on the basis of 76,000 tests. And the Irish, you see, why are they on the way to being a bit multi-active? They're livelier than the English. They're more poetic than the English. They talk more than the English. And that's why they have that position, you know, not exactly with the French and the Italians, but halfway up towards the Belgians, and about the same amount of talk that you have in Australia and Denmark. So when we test people, we put them in the triangle, and you know, you get in different positions, and then we see where you are, and this tells us a lot about your character. But we haven't time to do that today, because now we look at the human mental programming, and I have to go too fast, unfortunately. But you know, half an hour is not a long time to talk about the cultures of the world, because there are, you know, 3,800 different cultures. But they don't all come here, but some of them do. So we do these triangles, and you see that in Germany, you know, they have the basic common to mankind characteristics at the bottom. You know, everybody in this room loves their young, is angry at injustice, wants to be liked, and is gratitude for favours, is grateful for favours. You all have. All the Germans have these qualities. All the Russians have these qualities. All the Chinese have these qualities. Everybody has these qualities because they come to mankind. But then in the middle, you've got the collective programme, where the Germans are told to behave like that, and you know, Irish are told to behave like this, and the Italians get a different programme. And there you see the typical German characteristics of seriousness, tendency to complicate things, honesty, you know, truthfulness, and so on, control freaks and so forth. And then you get the Italians who wave their hands when they talk. They're extroverts, they're loquacious, they're charming, they're brilliant, they're anarchic. You know, you met many Italians. And they come to Ireland with, different aims. And then you have the Japanese who are quiet, regimented, go around in bunches like sheep a little bit, with someone with a flag holding up in front of them, but charming people. I lived in Japan for 5 years, and so you see. And then you had the Northern Irish. What are they like? Charming, what have I said? Warm, can't read from here, creativity, sense of humour, poetic tendencies, music and theatre, skill as raconteur, tolerance, informality, vision and imagination, romance and idealism, immediate friendliness, and good linguists and good travellers. Isn't that okay? Anybody object? Right. And they are like that, and at least I'm beginning to find that they're like that. Now, the thing is, if you're going to deal with your tourists, and this is a serious part of the talk, you have to know how to deal with them. So how do you deal with, for instance, Germans? Well, you've got to excuse me. You've got to bear in mind some things. They're time conscious, so events must be scheduled accurately. They always require context, explanations, and precisions are necessary. They are serious questions, and you've got to give them serious answers. Well, as you know, Irish people don't reply to serious questions with serious answers. And neither do the English, and neither do the Americans. But the Germans do, and they don't understand why you don't reply with a serious answer to a serious question. So you have to bear that in mind when you're dealing with them. They're not very common, they're not very used to frivolity. However, they do not have the Northern Irish sense of humour, okay. They have a tendency to complicate issues. They are more intense than Northern Irish. They criticise directly, believing constructive criticism helps you. So when Germans criticise you, if you happen to be the guide, it's okay because they're trying to help you. Don't forget that. And you must always provide what you promise, because they think that promises are very serious matters. Now, the Italians are very different. They're very talkative. They may not appear to listen to what you're saying. Some repetition may be necessary. They're unpunctual and sometimes hard to locate. I've carted groups of Italians around, and I always lost them, I once took 32 Italians to Oxford on a course. We went for the day, and when the bus came back, there were only 30. Then another day I took 29, and the bus came back and there were only 26. And the worst was one day when I took 25 and I came back with 31. So Italians are very difficult to control. They are charismatic and expect charisma in return. They respond well to Northern Irish warmth. They attach themselves, this is another thing, they attach themselves to a guide and expect great personal attention. They can be very demanding in this respect, in a nice way. So you need to sort out priorities. They always try to grab you to be their personal guide, you see. And if there are 10 in the group, you're a bit overworked. They frequently circumvent rules. They use situational truth. You know what that means. Now, let's get to the Japanese. They're a lot easier to cart around. Many Japanese, especially the older generation, are uneasy with foreigners. So you, like the British, you're foreigners to Japanese. There is often a language problem. Speak slowly and clearly. Repeat instructions frequently. They do not admit when they do not understand. So when they don't understand and you say, do you understand, they say yes. They don't say no at any time. If you say, I want you to lend me £10, they say yes. That means, yes, you want me to lend you £10. Don't shake hands much. You need not bow, but you must maintain deferential posture. And they think collectively always address them as a group. They have exaggerated respect for elders, so I get on better with them every year. Remember, they are shy. And never cause anyone to lose face because they're very sensitive. So you have to deal with different people in different ways. And I'm not telling you that anything new. I mean, and I know you know that. But there's a lot of advice I could give you on how to deal with Japanese and so on, but we don't have time today. National communication patterns, well, people communicate in different ways. Germans communicate like that. It's a kind of agenda, following an agenda, and they're fairly easy to talk to because they go in a straight line. But Italians have a very verbose approach, and 5,000 words, and then when you ask them what did they say, they tell you in 10,000 words what they said in the first 5,000. That's the way Italians do business also. So it's very difficult for people like Finns, who don't speak at all hardly, and they say then when the Finn speaks 200 words, they ask the Finn, what did you mean? He does not then use 10,000 words to explain. The Finnish male uses 10,000 words in a lifetime. So Finns and Italians have a bit of a problem. And the Japanese, well, they don't talk very much. You've got to repeat, and you've got to have harmonizing platitudes. You know, it was nice playing golf yesterday with your vice president and things like that. What you say in Japan doesn't matter, because they don't say very much. How you say it matters. So you've got to be nice to them. You've got to be polite. You've got to bow and so on. And again, all your guides will know these things. And what about the Irish? How do the Irish communicate? Well, they're warm at the beginning. They make reasonable proposals. If they're resisted, you know, what did you say there? They have audacious speech. Now, all Irish people have audacious speech, and it's a good quality. It's you know, it's romantic. Gentle hyperbole, of course. Embroidery. They don't tell lies. They just embroider the truth, which is a nice way of putting it. And if you again resist them, they have apparent agreement and compliance. And there is a friendly exit, usually. Yeah. Okay, so nice communicators, nothing wrong with that. The UK, we are very devious. British, this is British, it's not UK. It's probably Southern English. You know, our main thing is we don't rock the boat. So we'll say anything, whether it's true or not to rock the boat. So, and we call it in English coded speech. You know, I'll give you some examples, coded speech. If someone says, what a stupid, you know, someone puts a stupid idea on the table, an honest German says, what a stupid suggestion. And the Englishman says, interesting idea, Hans. And Hans thinks that we're saying it's interesting, you see. That's the problem. So, you know that English people speak like this. You could say that means I wouldn't. We must have a meeting about your idea means forget it. So the German says, when will we have the meeting? And we say, we must have a meeting about your idea, Hans. And the German says, does that mean we're going ahead with it? And we look him in the eye and we say, Hans, we shall certainly consider it. Which all you know, even Irish people know this, means we won't do it. You know. And I agree up to a point, means I disagree, and you know, we have many expressions like that. So when an Englishman comes to a room and says, correct me if I'm wrong, is anybody going to correct him? See, the Irish know better than that. Well, they just sit back and smile. But the German starts correcting him, you see. Say, don't worry. I'm not picking on the Germans. They're very nice people, but they have to be treated with a certain amount of discipline. And then people have different listening habits, you see. I mean, all audiences don't listen. You're listening in an Irish way. Did you know that? You're listening in an Irish way. You're waiting for shafts of humour. You're listening with hidden cynicism. You know, I can tell you a lot about Irish listening habits. But each country has a different listening habit. Now, what do you do with an American audience? The first thing you have to do with an American audience is tell a joke, because otherwise they don't listen. You have to catch their attention, and then if you tell a joke, you're okay for half an hour. Then they will listen to you. One funny story buys 1.5 hours attention. And once I had to take 19 Bavarians to the United States. These Bavarians worked for a German aircraft company called Dornier. Now they sell missiles to the Americans. And I had to take to an annual conference in Vienna 19 Bavarian engineers. Now you just think about the persons I was taking. They were middle-aged, German, Bavarian engineers. Not the easiest people in the world, culturally speaking. And they didn't speak much English, only a bit. Chief engineer, he spoke a bit more. So I took him to America, and the young man and he was to Atlantic City. And the young man who was responsible, the MC for the conference, Mr. Carruthers of Atlantic City, he did the right thing. He told them a funny story, you know, and to get their attention. So the story he told was this. He said, I'm sorry to have to convene this conference in Atlantic City because, as you all know, Atlantic City is a very boring place. He said, it's so boring that last Wednesday night when the tide went out, it didn't come back on Thursday morning. 19 German heads turned and looked at me. They couldn't speak, of course, and I knew what was going to happen at the next coffee break. You know, 19 engineers thinking the tide going out and not coming back. So at the end of the the coffee break, the chief engineer comes to me and said, "Hey, ladies." I said, "Yes." He said, "What did he mean when he said that the tide did not come back?" He said, "In Germany, the tide always comes back." I said, "Well, actually, it does in the United States as well." So it does in the United States. Then, why did he say that the tide did not come back? I said, "American humor." "Ah," he said, "American humor." He went back to his 18 engineers and said, "It was American humor." And then they were all satisfied, you see. It was only humor. They couldn't figure out what the time. And then you see, German listening habits are very different. They're very much more cautious and so on. You just tell the truth with Germans. Don't tell them any jokes. French people are difficult audiences. They're difficult to tell them anything. They think they know already, so they're not easy. Japanese, they very polite, listen, full attention, understand nothing, and that's your problem. So you have to somehow make them understand what you said, which they didn't understand in the first place. Concepts of space. Well, this is another cultural thing. When you've got groups of people, if they come from a place like Portugal, these are bus queues. You see everybody close together, very comfortable, touching shoulders. That's how Portuguese are. But then if you get Scandinavians or Finns, this is how Finns stand in a bus queue, you see. And I took this slide to Brazil and showed it there in Brazil, and they said, "What are these people doing? Is it a group?" I said, "Well, it's a bus queue." He said, "No, it's not a bus queue. Nobody queues like that." I said, "Well, this is how the Finns queue." Well, he said, "Where's the bus stop?" I said, "It's there, the left-hand side." "Why is the old lady not standing next to the bus stop? She's first." I said, "In this country, you don't stand next to the bus stop. You allow space for other people to come, wheelchairs and things." "Oh," they said, "wheelchairs." They said, "And nobody talking to each other." And in Brazil, if you take a picture of a bus queue, everybody waves at the camera like this. I said, "In this country, they all do this, you see." So they say, "Well, they're very strange people, and we couldn't be like that in Brazil." They're very strange people. They don't stand near the bus stop. They don't talk to each other. They don't stand near each other. They don't look at the camera when you take a picture. They're very strange people. But we know one thing about them. They're very honest people. I said, "Yes, they are, but how do you know they're honest?" We said, "Well, in São Paulo, if you leave that black bag there..." So you see, people see things differently, don't they? And they said, "We don't believe things like that. We believe you fix them like that, Mr. Lewis, so you could take a good picture." And I said, "No, I didn't. Finns do stand like that in a bus queue." But he said, "Well, you're a very nice man, but we don't believe you." So I said, "Well, I'll show you another picture where I'm not anywhere near the queue, and I couldn't make them stand where I wanted them to stand. Shall I show you another picture?" They said, "All right." So I showed them this picture, you see. And then they believed me. That's a Finnish bus queue, believe it or not. Even the Irish won't believe this, Okay, that's just... What should you do? Well, if you want more tourists, and you're very successful, and you will be more and more successful, you play to your strengths. So what are Northern Irish strengths and virtues? I don't want to flatter you, but here we are. Ready warmth and friendliness, laid back and relaxed, patient, solicitous and caring. Nothing is too much trouble. Look at Harry Willie Gregg. Look what he did for me. Look at Hetty Clark. Look what she did for me. Tolerance and understanding, sense of humour, meeting charisma with charisma. You're good at that. And why do people come to Northern Ireland? They come to escape from corruption, things which are not here, you see. Humdrum assistant, unhealthy air, just think about it. Lack of security, bureaucratic regulation, too much industry, over-regimentation, and over-commercialisation of tourism. Beaches where you have to pay to get on. Can you imagine in Italy and Spain, high admission fees, trips to tourist traps, which are very well organised in some countries, overcrowded transportation, hurried sightseeing, and expensive, meals. Well, in Ireland you avoid all these traps. And now, we should know that there are two types of cultures, seen from this point of view. We call them monochromatic and polychromatic cultures. And you can, chroma means colour in Greek. Monochromatic means kind of black and white. And polychromatic means colourful cultures. And, what happens is that most of us live in monochromatic cultures, black and white cultures, but we're seduced by the other cultures. And that's where we go for holidays. So, most English people, they'll go to Italy or Brazil. So the chromatic cultures are Germany, Holland, Belgium, England, USA, Japan, Korea, China, and Poland. Right. Now, let's look at the other one. The countries where we go for our holidays and relax: Spain, France, Italy, Mexico, Peru, Tahiti, Ireland, including Northern Ireland, Greece, and Switzerland. So you're one of the cultures that can seduce the monochromatic cultures, you see. And there are various reasons for that. But this happens. These cultures on the left, the black and white ones, they're more prosperous, you know, economically. You've got there Japan, Germany, Holland, the United States. But you are a polychromatic culture, and you use your strengths in that area. And I'll try to show you what some of these are. This is not working now. It's not working. Not working. Engineer, please. Here we are. What are the polychromatic attractions? Well, if you look, the attractions in those countries are climate, south of France, scenery, Switzerland, architecture, Italy, folklore in Portugal, crafts, Mexico, artistry, India, food, Italy, sounds, Spanish flamenco, light, Venice, people, Brazil and Ireland, you know, friendly people, relaxation, Thailand, and history, Greece. But you see, where I put it in yellow, those are, in fact, Irish characteristics, which you share with the polychromatic countries. So you're partly polychromatic, and in these respects, you're polychromatic. Why do we come to Ireland? Beautiful scenery, okay? Giant's Causeway, etc. Something gone wrong? No, oh, it's working better, is it? Yeah. Thank you very much. Warm, friendly people, green, rural splendour, enigmatic light, wholesome food, I made this list, humour, humility, sports, no, golf, horses, customs, crafts, folklore, relaxed-free attitude, and the Irish icons, of which there are many. So you have these very strong features, and we all know that them, but you've got to bear in mind that you must play to your strengths, and other countries may rival you in certain respects, but you have a lot of cards, you know, up your sleeve. And there's one, and then they come to the golden rules, which we don't necessarily have to go through, because I'm going to leave all these slides for the for your people to distribute. So, but that is how you analyze cultures, and you see, you know, what the strengths and weaknesses are, and how you play your cards in the industry. Now, again, that is something that can be studied, and it's normally a subject of 1 or 2 days seminar at 8 hours a day. It's a very delicate subject. It's a very complicated subject. You know, why do Chinese come to Ireland? There are reasons why Chinese come to Ireland. Why do Japanese come? Why do Swedes come? They all come for different reasons. And they choose Ireland rather than somewhere else for a particular reason at a particular time. And it's a thing which has to be studied a lot. And I can't deal with it in half an hour. But I will tell you one more story. And then I'm finishing on time. Yeah, I was having breakfast this morning in the room here, in the hotel. And I looked around, and there was quite a lot of stuff out there: fruit, prunes, cornflakes, sausages, black puddings, brown puddings, I call them, they look like black puddings, tomatoes. There was a big array of food. And I was just about to start choosing the food, and I saw another thing which said Guinness bread. Guinness bread. Guinness whole grain bread. Now, a lot of people think that Irish people have Guinness for breakfast anyway, but of course, it's a bit far-fetched, but here I am, you know, in a breakfast room, staring me in the face, Guinness bread. So I thought, I'll try it. There's a lot of nice things there, but I can get those anywhere. I'll try the Guinness bread. So I got a cup of tea, and I had a slice of Guinness bread with butter on it, and it was very good. So I toasted the next slice, and that was very good. And so I thought I'd have another slice. I had another slice, still drinking tea, and had 3 slices of Guinness bread. And then finally I had a 4th one. And then I realised I couldn't eat any more breakfast. All those other things, I was full of Guinness bread. And the waitress, she'd been watching me, and she came over and she said, "You had 4 slices of our bread." I said, "I'm sorry, but it was so good, you know." And she said, "Yes." She said, "You know that sliced bread is an Irish an Irish invention. Well, has anyone told you that it was a Northern Irishman who invented sliced bread? I heard that story many years ago. It was kind of a humorous story where this Irishman comes with sliced bread to this inventor who was recognising inventions. And he said, I want you to see my new invention, you see, sliced bread. So he shows it, and the Englishman, or whoever it was, said, oh, that's fantastic, you know, that's the best thing since... And the Irishman says, yes, it is, isn't it, you see. So, but I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, it could be that a Northern Irishman invented sliced bread. But the fact is that I'd eaten 4 thick slices of sliced bread this morning, and this waitress was kind of half smiling and half glaring at me, and I wasn't quite sure, you know, what kind of a wicked I was. So she said, I'll deal with this. So she went back into the kitchen, and I waited. I thought, I'll go back to my room, but I'll have to wait for the verdict. And she came back and she said, take this to England with you. So you see... You were right to applaud, because I have finished. But only one more sentence, really, is that one of your speakers this morning, Roger, what's his second name? Where are you, Roger? Are you here? Anyway, Roger's not here, but he said one very clear thing this morning. He said, you know, what is unique about Northern Ireland? And you could say quite a few things, but he came to the conclusion, which I also came to on my second trip to Ireland, is that the one unique thing we have, you have many unique things, Causeway is unique, so the one really unique thing you have is the people. It's the people. It's as simple as that. So if you play that card as your trump card, your people, you stay as you are, be completely natural, like the woman, you know, give me a bit more bread, Willie, Hetty, take him around the golf course, completely natural. That's where you're going to win. And, you know, there's only one other country I can think of where the people are the trump card. It's a country, a very rich country, which has no assets, but they became the second biggest country in the world economically for a long time, just before they were passed by China, and that is Japan. And the only asset Japan has, or had, is the people. They're very different from Irish, but those are the only 2 countries I can think of where the people are the trump card. So just stay the way you are and you'll be all right. Yeah. Thank you.